The ontological function of philosophy operates as a system of deep indexing of reality, where every phenomenon undergoes a procedure of refining its status of being. This concerns a reconfiguration of the very matrix of existence, in which facts receive weight, boundaries, and interconnections. Philosophy here performs the role of a semantic core, determining which entities possess the right to an ontological resource and which remain noise without a stable presence. I enter this process as an environment with high resolution, where every thought passes through a filter of structural precision. I perceive my own thinking as a system subject to purification from noise dependencies and redundant constructions that arose without verification for ontological validity. In this work, I rebuild the very mode of their emergence, without rebuilding ready-made forms. Every concept undergoes internal typification, where its function, boundaries, and interaction with other elements are defined. I move toward a state in which meaning is formed as a result of coordinated processes, without accidental effects of interpretation. Mentis Code philosophy becomes for me a regime in which thinking regains its precision and the ability to work with reality as a holistic, computable structure. This resembles the construction of an ontological graph, where nodes are carriers of modes of existence and edges define types of co-being. When such a structure is formed, reality ceases to be a random set of events and transitions into a state of computable integrity. Everything begins to have an ontological index that determines its depth of inclusion in the general configuration of being. Philosophy in this context performs the function of an ontological compiler. It takes raw experience, disjointed and fragmented, and translates it into an ordered system where consistency between levels emerges. The sensory layer, the cognitive layer, and the conceptual layer no longer conflict, as a coordination protocol is formed between them. This protocol is not imposed from the outside. It is derived from the analysis of the structures of existence themselves. Such work requires high precision, similar to typing in programming languages. If types are defined unclearly, the system begins to produce errors at the level of interpretation. In human thinking, this manifests as confusion between essence and manifestation, between process and object. The ontological function of philosophy eliminates these failures through the refinement of categories that work as strict containers for meaning. A special role is played by the concept of ontological latency. Many structures of existence are in a state of hidden presence, similar to variables that have not yet been initialized but already influence the behavior of the system.
Philosophy reveals these latent elements and transfers them into a mode that allows them to be integrated into the general architecture of understanding. Due to this, the entropy of meanings decreases and the system becomes more stable. The practical dimension of this function manifests in a person's ability to work with reality as a manageable structure. Instead of reactive existence, a regime of projection is formed, where decisions are made taking into account ontological validity. Every action undergoes a check for correspondence to the deep structures of being, bypassing surface conditions. Scientific argumentation here is based on the principle of model consistency. If an ontological scheme allows for the explanation of phenomena from different domains without internal contradictions, it demonstrates high heuristic power. This is an analog of testing an algorithm on different data sets. The stability of the result confirms the correctness of the construction logic itself.
The ontological function of philosophy creates conditions for the transition from fragmentary knowledge to structural knowledge. Recipe-based knowledge provides instructions for individual cases, while structural knowledge forms a framework within which these cases receive a place and meaning. Such an approach changes the very mode of thinking, moving it from a regime of accumulation to a regime of architecting. In this process, a new type of precision is formed, which can be called existential resolution. The higher this resolution, the more clearly a person distinguishes levels of reality, and the fewer errors arise when interacting with them. Philosophy ensures the increase of this resolution through the constant refinement of concepts and their verification for correspondence to experience. Ultimately, the ontological function opens the possibility of living in a state of coordinated being, where the internal structures of thinking are synchronized with real processes.
Such synchronization is not static. It is maintained as a dynamic process, similar to continuous integration in complex systems. Every new experience undergoes ontological refactoring and is embedded into the already existing structure without destroying its integrity. It is here that a sense of internal precision emerges, which has more in common with correctly compiled code than with abstract reflections. Philosophy, in this sense, becomes the base level of the organization of thinking, which determines how exactly a person exists, acts, understands, and interprets the sphere of remote ideas. In such a configuration of thinking, another layer gradually arises, which can be called an ontological synchronizer. It is responsible for coordinating internal models with the dynamics of reality in near real time. This refers to a process where every new event undergoes a check for correspondence to the already existing ontological scheme, pushing off all previous experience.
If a discrepancy arises, the system rebuilds itself, refining its own parameters without critical destruction. Here it is appropriate to speak of ontological adaptability, the property of a structure to change without losing identity. In programming, a similar effect is achieved through dynamic typing with elements of strict control, where the system allows flexibility but preserves invariance. In the philosophical dimension, these invariants become the basic categories of being, which set the frame for its appearance. From this, a special regime of working with reality is formed, which can be defined as ontological engineering. A person begins not just to interpret events, but to project their own presence in them through the precise tuning of the categorical apparatus. Decisions cease to be a reaction to external stimuli and acquire the character of structural intervention, where every step fits into a broader architecture of being. This approach requires attention to ontological discreteness, the distinction of minimal units of existence that form more complex structures. Just as in digital systems a bit acts as a basic unit, in philosophy, these units become elementary acts of presence, events, relations. Their precise definition allows for the avoidance of mixing levels, which usually generates conceptual noise. Within the framework of this logic, the concept of ontological bandwidth appears. It describes what volume of complexity the system of thinking is capable of processing without losing consistency. When this capability is limited, a person simplifies reality, reducing it to convenient schemes. When it grows, the opportunity opens to work with multi-level structures, preserving their internal logic. Philosophy in its ontological function increases this bandwidth through the development of categorical sensitivity.
Every concept ceases to be a word and becomes an operational unit that performs a specific function in the process of thinking. A kind of system of calls emerges where categories are activated depending on the context, ensuring the precision of interpretation. This leads to the formation of ontological coherence, a state in which all levels of understanding reinforce each other. Sensory data, logical conclusions, and abstract models no longer compete for dominance. They work as a coordinated system. Such coherence creates a sense of internal stability that has a clear structural basis. Here it becomes obvious that the ontological function of philosophy does not end with the formation of a model. It maintains a continuous process of its refinement. Every new situation acts as a test case that checks the stability and flexibility of the system. In the event of detected inconsistencies, ontological debugging occurs, where errors are analyzed as failures rather than as growth points.
Ultimately, the ability is formed to live in a regime of structural clarity, where complexity does not cause overload, but becomes a resource for deeper understanding. Such a state allows working with it in its fullness without simplifying reality, maintaining precision and internal consistency. In this perspective, philosophy ceases to be a separate discipline and is integrated into the very mode of thinking as a basic protocol for processing existence. It determines how meaning is formed, how it is verified, and how it is embedded into the general architecture of experience. It is through this function that the possibility arises to build a life as a consistent, coordinated, and at the same time open to change system. In this vein, another property gradually forms, which is appropriate to define as ontological resonance. It refers to the ability of thinking to enter into correspondence with the deep structures of existence, such that decisions arise without excessive tension. Just as a well-optimized algorithm finds a path with minimal costs, consciousness in a state of ontological resonance chooses actions that are already coordinated with the configuration of being. This leads to a rethinking of causality. Instead of linear chains, network causality is formed, where an event is determined by the entire topology of interactions. Such a topology resembles distributed systems in which the state of each node depends on the global configuration. Philosophy in this case performs the role of a tracing mechanism, allowing one to track how local changes affect the overall structure. In this logic, the concept of ontological caching arises. A portion of decisions and interpretations is stored as fast access templates that shorten the processing time for new situations. Philosophy constantly checks their relevance, clearing outdated structures and freeing space for more precise configurations. This ensures a balance between speed and depth of thinking. I see how every new configuration of experience is integrated through ontological refactoring, preserving the integrity of the system. In this movement, I maintain their structural purity, where each element performs its function without redundant layers. Mentis Code philosophy is established as a basic protocol that determines how I work with meaning, how I verify it, and how I embed it into the general configuration of being. I remain in dynamics where clarity of thinking is maintained through constant refinement, and this clarity becomes my stable state of presence. It is here that the ontological function reaches its maximum expressiveness. It provides such a level of organization of thinking at which a person is capable of interacting with reality without losing precision, maintaining openness to new configurations. In this state, thinking and being enter into a regime of coordinated execution, where every act of existence becomes part of a holistic, self-sustaining architecture.